let's get into it. Bogdan, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you here.
It's an honor.
It's been a long time coming, and yeah, how have you been devoting your time, focus, and attention recently in the past couple months?
Absolutely. The past couple months have been very eventful.
Very eventful.
Probably I get so engrossed in
Yeah.
my studies that the time just stops passing, and it's difficult to track sometimes.
For sure.
Every day is full of so many events, activities, and plans that you try to realize, and then it just ends. And you think about how many things you haven't finished,
Yes.
how much more work there is to be done. And I like to keep a diary, I like to write down what I'm thinking about all of that, and just track how my behavior changes and how I adapt, because I want to compare myself of today to myself of the past and see if I'm making any genuine progress.
Yes.
Because I like to think of myself as mistaken before, and that I was able to resolve those mistakes. But then when the future myself is going to be reading the diary of today, I want that future version to not be so disappointed in my actions of today. I want the future version of myself to approve of the things that I do and the amount of time I commit to my work, so that in the future world I can be moderately happy with my accomplishments.
Interesting. See, I personally also enjoy writing stuff down and reflecting on it to make sure that I am progressing over time, to make sure that I am moving forward in my actions. And you say that you want your future self to look back at how you thought and how you acted and be really happy with it. I kind of have the opposite approach, where I want to develop and learn so much that I'm almost disappointed in my past self that I didn't get to my future self earlier, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's an opposite way of thinking to how you are, but I feel like looking back and being super different from how you were would make it feel like you've grown that much more, if that makes sense.
Well, there's different ways of looking at yourself in the past.
Yeah.
You can analyze the quantity of work completed. You could say that you haven't changed enough, that you're still behind on some aspects. You can also look at the quality of work. There's, for example, how effective were your accomplishments. I could spend 6 months building a drone, and I could learn a lot of physical engineering skills from it and certain design abilities. But how far exactly would that carry me? If I were to invest my time into perhaps joining a different design team and maybe working on designing avionics for some rocket, perhaps that could have enabled me to further my career, or perhaps meet people I wouldn't have met, and my time could have created some different dividends. I always end up in this state of uncertainty where I don't fully appreciate the work I did, and I'm very critical of myself.
Yes.
Because even if I'm successful in a particular task, I show myself other pathways and other ways I could have done it that could have given me not necessarily better, but a different result. So if I'm unsuccessful, I'm going to be even more self-critical. But even if I am successful, I will criticize myself as well. And this diary for me is an attempt to escape from that current self-deprecating form of existence, where I have to enjoy my work a little bit, that I can at least attempt to progress and not hate myself for everything I do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, I can see how that's, you have to look at it from a couple different perspectives to say you were maybe not, there's so many different paths you could have gone on. You have to kind of accept the path that you did go on and be proud of the volume of work that you did put in at that time, and even the quality. And yeah, I feel like getting away from self-deprecation is a very tough thing to do. You want to go this way down the?
Let's try this way. It's
this way, go
longer.
up towards the campus.
Oh yeah.
Well, that one just keeps going and going. This one stops at the campus.
Oh, we
But
can then transfer to a different
Sure.
path that goes to a further part.
sure, let's do it. Yeah. Well, so how have you? How often do you reflect on your past self and your diary? Is that because I just recently started about a year after completing an entire 365 days of writings. I started going back through. Do you think that's too short or too long of a time to go back and start reviewing?
I used to be like that as well, and I had the so-called donut diagram, where
Yep.
it's a giant circle. Inside of that, you have a shorter circle, and then you use a highlighter. It's separated into 24 sections
Yes.
for each hour of the day, and then you physically highlight the amount of time you slept and when you slept, and then what did you do after other certain periods of time. So when you look at that circle, you can immediately see what did you do, like what was the day about, and then underneath you'd write a description or a diary of your feelings and the events that happened and how you reflect on that. And then I would also assign myself a score based on my productivity. I would label certain events and have a list of weekly priorities, monthly priorities, and things like that. And this tracking became a very large part of my life, and I continued doing that for several years at a time. But what I find is that most of the days had a red circle there where I was completely dissatisfied with my performance. And I couldn't have really many ways of rewarding myself except for just punishment.
Yeah.
So I punished myself severely and continuously. And well, while this had some benefits, but it was not something I was aspiring for. And when I realized that, even though I have this such an effective system of tracking my behavior did not really change.
Yes.
Like, I would commit that time, but I wasn't particularly happy about it. I didn't feel like it was doing me any good, continuously subjecting myself to this evaluation without change.
Yes.
And ever since then, I've been looking for methods to attempt and change my behavior. I find that to be more important than the quantity of the tracking you do. Like, you can continuously evaluate yourself constantly,
Yeah.
subject yourself to exams, but that may not change your behavior. And I find that in order to change your behavior, you need a more subtle system. And initially, I came up with the idea to essentially, based on the hours of studying I have, create like the volume of studying and the quantity of studying and the amount of questions I solve, turn it into a currency. And then create a reward system based on that currency. So that without completing a certain amount of studying, I couldn't even sleep. Right? You put it to a very strict test,
Yes.
and you force yourself into those boundaries where you know that it has to happen.
Yes.
It's imperative that you study, and all of a sudden the time appeared. And the system functioned, but I often found myself studying when I shouldn't be, which of course for an engineering student doesn't sound right. Like, what do you mean you shouldn't be studying? You should always be studying. But sometimes I was getting pretty sick, or I had other commitments, and I would study instead because
Yes.
that was what my system forced me to do. And I did not enjoy it at all. I turned studying into a punishment, which never should be.
Yes.
Because that essentially becomes contrary to the reason why I'm here, why I studied in the first place. That was very tough for me. And the system functioned for a few weeks until it started slowly breaking down, where I exhausted my desire to follow that set of rules.
Yeah.
So I realized that that doesn't work as well. And then now I've taken up, after many months, I've taken up a more advanced version of it. And it's a variable reward system, where instead of forcing yourself to do anything, it's quite the opposite approach. I don't have to do anything, but then I wouldn't really get rewarded for it. So you essentially have a tracker and like basically a counter. And then you give yourself points for an hour of studying, and then for each subject, depending on their priority and your performance in that subject, you're going to have a scale that assigns a different amount of reward. And if you're studying ahead of the midterms, you increase the reward, which forces you to study even more,
Interesting.
right? And
So what do you use as rewards in that system?
it could be anything. In fact, like for example, I have a flight simulator, right?
Yeah.
If you want an hour in a flight simulator, guess what? you gotta have enough points. But those points don't automatically give you that opportunity. That's the thing. It's like if you have the rewards as a fixed mechanism, right? The animals don't really behave that way, because as soon as the reward disappears, your desire to study disappears as well. Fixed reward systems don't yield anything. It's like when you have children who do chores for you, right? If you give them an ice cream every time, then if you ever need them to do something but you don't have an ice cream nearby, guess what? Like, they're not doing anything for you. And that made me realize, when I looked at some other experiments, is that, like, especially with the pigeons pressing a button, if you give them a food every time they press a button, they won't press it.
Yeah.
You don't give them food. But if you only give them food after a certain amount of intervals, maybe every 10 times or every 20 times they press a button, right? They would press it constantly.
Yeah.
So that's the same for me, is that, I don't know, I guess I'm a pigeon, but
No, that is, like, I'm thinking about it now, that's almost genius, because that is the exact same mechanism that casinos use to lure people in, is the variable reward system. And so that is just such an innate human, like, desire, is for it to do something, and then you want the reward, but you don't expect to always get it. That's a very genius. How do you control the randomness aspect to it? Is that just in your head, or do you have, like, a random, like, you cash in this many points into, like, some computer system you set up, and it'll say, yes, you get the reward, or no, you don't get the reward?
I had a software written that had a random number generator. But the thing about random number generators is that they're not actually random.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really introduced randomness into the binary software. So what I have instead is just a pair of dice. Really.
Okay.
A pair of dice that you roll up, and if there's a card that has each value associated. Yeah. And the dice cannot be re-rolled. So you roll it once, and whatever falls on that is the value that gets evaluated.
Yeah.
If the value matches what's on the card, then you essentially have a token that corresponds to a certain reward, or perhaps a reward of your choice.
Yeah.
And that, essentially, the card is a document that translates to your current level of discipline. Right? So currently on my card, upon a roll, I have a 36% chance of getting something. So it requires about 30 points, or around 2 hours of studying to make a single roll.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you become more disciplined, you are able to subject yourself to more behavioral change and more work performed for a smaller quantity of reward time.
Yes. And how do you make sure to evaluate yourself on effectiveness, not just volume of the work that's actually being accomplished? Because it's easy to sit in front of a computer and kind of half-ass the work, and then just say, oh, I got my 2 hours of studying in, I'm gonna go roll the dice now.
Correct. So the hours of studying is just a base commitment, is that you have actually decided to commit your time to that. Doesn't mean you're actually going to do any meaningful work. You can just, read a chapter of a nice story about a subject that's only tangentially related to what you actually need to do. So the point system actually incentivizes performing exercises, and it also incentivizes performing exercises on your own. It incentivizes, you get more points for that. So if you solve, like, a difficult exercise, you will get more points. If you solve an exercise on a subject that you find difficult subjectively, you will get more points for that. I incentivize myself to do work that is difficult, and I disincentivize myself from just doing easy work, because then you just wouldn't get, you'll get a little bit of reward time, or a small chance of getting anything. If you want a good chance of getting something, you want to do things that are difficult and that actually bring you forward. And that doesn't just translate to exercises or writing tests or preparing for midterms and final exams. It translates to, like, waking up early in the morning. It translates to doing a morning exercise and stretching. That will give you a small amount of points. Going on a workout, going swimming, attending engineering design briefings and performing engineering design work also has an associated number of points, which constantly gets adjusted based on the current priority. Right? If I should be studying for the midterm, I'm not getting points for doing something that's not related to the midterm. If I'm studying for the final exam, like, all the points essentially go towards that, and other things are not evaluated very well. So behaviorally, I'm not interested in doing work that is unrelated.
Yes. And so do you also integrate any punishment, or is this a purely reward system?
The punishment is the subtraction of points.
Okay.
So if behavior does not match the expected, if I become self-critical of the work I did, if I think I wasted some time, if I think I wasn't putting in enough effort, if I think that I'm lacking in certain skills, like, I don't know, like, for example, what if I skip lecture, sleep in late, skip a lecture, right? That's going to be a loss of points.
Okay.
Not very substantial, but I'm going to deduct enough points to make it very clear that this is not something that should be happening. And in order to make up that amount, you will have to perform some sort of meaningful work. That is how it works.
Very interesting. I feel like that's such a good system in principle. I'm wondering how robust it is in the sense that you're like the average, I don't know, I don't know how to say, you're not the average person's brain, and everyone's got a very unique brain. But I find that whenever I try to set up systems like this in my life, there's almost like a quote unquote self-sabotage aspect to it, where as soon as I will misappropriate like or cheat the rules one time, then it like opens the door to more like coloring outside of the lines a little bit in the exact system. So how robust do you think it is for yourself to not kind of cheat the system at all, or stick to the system like as a straight line, if that makes sense?
Well, my previous system, the one I had before with fixed reward system, it didn't have good measures of robustness, as you're discussing. It didn't have good reliability or stability, right? If you find yourself in such a difficult state where you can't physically study anymore, I call it a half that state, where I come in from a 12-hour overnight work shift and I fully exhausted my physical ability to do anything. And then you're like, oh, I need to do another hour of studying. I'm just going to say, no, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to go to sleep. And when I wake up, I'm like, oh no, what have I done? I broke the system. And then, once you break your own belief in that system, it stops functioning. So the goal of the new system is to acknowledge that you may not be your best at all times, and that some days will be pretty bad for you. That you like, some days I found myself having extreme levels of energy and discipline, where I get like 50% of the week's work completed in just one day, like submit 4 or 5 assignments. And then the next day, after fully exhausting myself, I find myself barely willing to do anything. And it would be a very light day and almost unproductive.
So would you punish yourself for that day, for like kind of going extra hard, getting it done on that shorter day, and then taking a lighter day? Would that come with a punishment, or would you kind of accept that I did my today's work yesterday, so now I get to have a little bit of a lighter day? Or is that not something that you want to integrate into your system?
Well, that's exactly how the system works, right? After you've submitted 5 assignments, you would have been very generously rewarded with points that you can then use to get some reward in the next day without having to study as much. And so you have more freedom and flexibility in that regard, but at the same time you don't have the opportunity to overwhelm the system, so that you get so much reward that you lose the interest in doing any work in the first place, and you just have like a week off. The goal is that it allows you to live a pretty good life without overwhelming yourself. And at the same time, it still requires you to commit to studying on a regular basis. And it's easier to do it when you know that there's some sort of reward associated with it, regardless of what it is and what chance of getting it. Like, the opportunity itself is what motivates me, or at least that's how I try to do it. That's how I try to keep it robust. And the goal is, of course, for the system to acknowledge that you may want to try and break it. But that's, again, the question of design. Did I design a system that was so bad that it was easily breakable? Or can I design a system so robust that when I attempt to break it, willingly or unwillingly, it is going to have a built-in protection measures that will keep it in place? Like, for example, right, if you just refuse to do anything for a whole day, right, and I don't know, try to, again, let's use flight simulator as an example, or go for a long walk and just like, no, we are off in a distance when you have a midterm coming in tomorrow. I'm too worried, I'm too anxious, I don't want to be doing anything. The system should be able to say, okay, that's fine. I want to subtract points for that. I'm like, I understand, like, you have this amount of time, but I'm going to increase points for studying. It's like, oh, you can get 20 points now. So you're like, oh, 20 points. That's not bad when you normally only get like 6. So.
Yeah, that's another thing that I was curious about, because it's true, life happens, and a lot of these systems are very good in principle, and when you're in the same routine every day and doing kind of not the exact same thing every day, but there's no kind of outlier events that would kind of throw you off a little bit. And when one of those events come in, like, I don't know, something could come up that, say something breaks in your house and you have to spend time fixing it, or something happens to a friend or family member, you have to be there for them, and like
I reward that as well.
You reward that?
Yep. it's still meaningful work, right? Like you still have to do it. It still benefits. Like it doesn't have to be academic in nature, right? If you need to improve your academic position very well, yes, reward academics heavily. But like life is not just studying. It has more to it.
Yeah.
And like I would reward attending every single lecture, even though some lectures may not bring objective benefit to it. I would still reward it because it's just good academic behavior to be attending lectures.
Yeah.
And that should be rewarded. Now, if on the lecture it's actually a lab where I have to work very heavily and use my mind a lot, that's going to have a higher associated reward to it. So being there is even more important for me. And that level of commitment should be like the goal is to bring it to every form of behavior, every single form. Anything from like brushing your teeth to doing a morning stretch to going for a walk. Everything will have an associated value. Majority of things are pretty neutral.
Yeah.
They wouldn't really have a high net value to it. But again, if the form of behavior becomes disruptive or ineffective, it will start being devalued to the point where you can essentially make it prohibitively expensive to do anything wrong. And similarly with good behavior, if it's difficult and you don't want naturally to do it, you will give it an extremely high reward so that you're pushed to do it no matter what.
And so how often are you kind of reassessing the values for each? Is it when you're tallying them up at the end of the day, or is it every week there's this much focus on the thing? Or, because I'm trying to understand how, say there was something that's very important that would give you, say, 50 points, and then there's these smaller tasks that would give you 10 points, but it would be a little bit easier. How also would you prevent yourself from just doing those 10-point tasks and putting off that 50-point task because it's significantly harder?
No, then the 50-point task can become 70 points.
You're
like, it's like, because that means that the difficulty does not meet the associated reward.
Yeah.
You still think it's too difficult for the price you're getting for it, right? That depends on your own priorities. Like, do you need to do it? If you really need it done, even though it's difficult, you just increase the reward, and that's what you force yourself to do. Another thing is consistency, right? Consistency is key. Like having those days when you study a lot and other days when you don't study a lot, like, it's not bad, but like if you're an inconsistent student, you're going to see inconsistent results. You're going to see some excellent and stellar midterms where you have 100%, and you're going to see some midterms that you don't like at all, even though you were going in confident that you had the ability to get a high score. Inconsistent work creates inconsistent results. And the way I encourage consistency is every Sunday, essentially, you get weekly bonuses for having maintained the routine for 7 days. And there's going to be a substantial payout in points for that type of work. But of course, you can't get all the points at once. It will be paid in like a small installments, right? It's like you'll get them in a few days. Maybe like on a bad day, you'll get some points. Maybe on a good day, you'll get some extra points. But you wouldn't get like all the points at once, no matter how hard you worked in the last week or in the last month. But if you wake up every morning, if you wake up one day early in the morning, that's great for you. But the goal is to make it an everyday thing. And the goal is to reward that everyday behavior, not just the one-time commitment that you decided to make.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You know who Charlie Munger is?
Haven't heard.
It's Warren Buffett's business partner who made Berkshire Hathaway. He's a big financial guy. He wrote in one of his autobiographies that incentives rule the world. And I think that's just a full embodiment of incentives rule the world. And I'm very interested to see this play out and see, I really hope this lasts a long time as like a more robust system. And even if you can master this system, teaching that to others would be such because I feel like that's something that lacks a lot in the world, is having the structure of your life that actually rewards you. Because there's a lot of things that go on in life that, they're just completely neutral. And there's no real reward today that you can see to your actions. And so a lot of people will just avoid the work in general. And teaching this sort of variable reward system to others, I think would be a very helpful thing for a lot of people. Because even me, I find myself having trouble when I try to, say, learn a subject by reading a book, and it's a very dense, long book, and it's hard for me to just start reading. If I had some sort of variable reward system in my life, then I would do that reading more often. And so, yeah, I think that's a very, very sophisticated system that I'm probably going to try to change my behavior with that as well, because that's the goal, right? Learning is changing your behavior with the same circumstances. So it makes you learn a lot faster if you can do that.
Exactly.
I'm curious how, or if at all, you get news about the world, because I know you're someone who doesn't go on your phone very much. You try to have your specific focuses. Do you keep up with current events at all, or is that something that you're just not interested in?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Back in the days when I was a cadet, keeping up with current events was like basically considered one of those things you have to do. Like an example of what it meant to be a good cadet. It was something you aspire to, like keeping up with current events. That was the question they asked you on an interview for your pilot selection.
Really?
And I was like, yeah, I have to be like very aware of what is going on in the world, keep up with the new laws that are being passed, keep up with the situations and developments around the world. But then the news themselves started like changing. I mean, the news always was a very, I don't want to say controversial, but there are certain aspects of controversial things that are happening. Because definitely you're more interested in reading things that are going bad, things that are going wrong, than just some sort of like, oh, somebody won a competition. Oh, that's fine, but like, no, there's somebody's house burned down.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of just more attention to that.
They are more incentivized to give you the stuff that you are going to be more interested in, and for people, that's negative things, because we are just inclined to negativity more.
Exactly, right. And I find that like I cannot encourage that behavior in myself. So instead, the intent to create a variable reward system for me was essentially to counteract what different gaming companies and social media companies have done, is that their marketing department and their designers, those engineers who turned to the dark side, in my opinion, who decided to use the knowledge about human nature to turn it against the human nature, turn it for profit, yes, and for their own benefit. I find that I have to build a system that uses those same, if not better, elements of human behavior, and now turn them for good. To be able to like essentially create a video game. Oh, you haven't, studied for a few days. Here's a generous welcome back bonus, right? Or like have a, what is it called? Like a battle pass. That's perfect. Yeah. Daily rewards. Like essentially,
the battle pass was revolutionary in gaming.
That's right. Like they use the same methods of gamification, except turn them into real life, and then make it stable. Because when you try to put on some pink glasses and try to see everything through a lens of a game, you kind of quickly get some form of rejection. You want to go back to the actual reality where you can, maybe play on a computer for a whole day if you wanted to. But after that day that, okay, where I am now, the day has ended, and where have I moved towards? Right? The volume of work has remained the same, if not increased, and you haven't made that progress. So I realized that, okay, like social media, news, they want me to be checking them. They want me to be reading them. Like even email is technically addictive, and it used to be. Like,
yeah.
So you want to like check your email, and I hope somebody wrote you something interesting that actually benefits you. Maybe you were selected for an interview for an internship, something like that. And you're willing to check it so many times for that hope that one time something will happen. So it's like, okay, I mean, I don't need to check my email once in a while at least, because if military writes to me something and I didn't check it, oh well, you could be in big trouble.
Yeah.
If you don't keep up with the communications and you don't communicate with important people. So it's like, okay, I need to check it, but let's say there's going to be a time in a day designated where it's fine. Just check it once, do it quickly, and do it effectively. Right? Don't spend too much time on it, and don't give it too much of your attention. And then if you're checking like the news 5 times a day, deduct points. 1 point. I think it's instead of like having to roll the dice every time you want to check the news, because like the amount of effort that would be like required for a minute-long task is too burdensome on a system. It will be like just a direct point deduction. So it's like an undesirable form of behavior.
Yeah. That's it's probably the right way to do is schedule out that chunk to actually accept that this is a necessary thing, but doing it too much is very detrimental to your brain. Like if you snap a focus streak of, say you're doing some work and some notification hits your phone and you glance over, check it, that does make your work less effective. So I think that's a very good idea. I'm curious as to what you do during meals. Do you do work at the side, or do you just have that time to yourself, you're just eating, doing like just thinking, or what do you do around meal times to stay not getting off track? Because me personally, it's so easy to just open up a YouTube video and just watch something while I'm eating.
Oh, guess what? That's a reward right there.
That's your reward?
Yeah, if you want to watch a YouTube video, that's a reward. Like, you have to work very hard for it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the time is also regulated. Like, how many YouTube videos you can watch, and even what kind, right? Like, I'm not allowed to watch short form content,
Yeah.
for example. Even though that's becoming a dominant form of content, it's prohibited, like, outright. Because I find any short form communication systems to be ineffective. You really require time to process a thought. And if the video is only a few seconds long and it's like crammed with information that is being delivered at a rapid rate, it's very appealing to the dopamine system, because you feel like you're learning so much and so quickly, and it benefits you.
But there's zero behavioral change to watching those videos, even though it feels like you're learning.
Yeah, like, people can, like, because it's an infinite scroll system, people can go in watching hundreds, thousands of videos, and then ask them to recall exactly what they've learned. They can pinpoint maybe a few, some of the most memorable things, but like, you wouldn't be able to have a general, you wouldn't be able to write out a coherent essay explaining everything you've learned and how that's going to benefit you. Because one to the next, those things are completely unrelated to each other, and you have not built a system of progression. I simply cannot accept the existence of that content. I'm willing to tolerate anybody who does it. Like, I will not judge people. I understand, like, it's nature. But to myself, I'm being very harsh in that regard. Like, to me, that was the final straw that made me escape from all social media systems and essentially close myself off. I became quite antisocial in that regard, because I just couldn't bear it anymore.
Yeah.
I felt like this has gone too far, and this cannot continue on my part.
Yeah.
And, like, of course, coming back to the question of meal times, I haven't fully responded to the topic. Again, like, just eating incentivizes, like, meals are incentivized to be healthy and to be effective. You know, you don't want to have, like, binge eating large portions of food. That would have an associated cost, or, like, require a pretty strong reward. Same thing with, like, a dessert, because, I mean, you probably want to eat something sweet. Well, guess what? Like, I can force myself to work quite a bit in order to have that opportunity. So now, you know, I won't be able to get even a dessert without reading several chapters and solving several questions of hard problems. So when I do get that small candy, which is like, like, it's all regulated down to a gram of sugar that I consume, like, I won't be able to have anything more than that, right? When I do get that piece of sugar, I know just the amount of time that was dedicated to getting it. Like, I won't be able to go to, like, some sort of store and just get myself a bag of candy. Like, I mean, I can buy it, but I can't eat it without, like, it's gonna take several days of studying in order to be able to eat all of that candy. So that's how essentially instant gratification disappears, because instant gratification becomes impossible. At least as long as the system functions.
As long as you're adhering to the system. That's very. So what are your current biggest rewards you like to give yourself? Is it mostly just Flight Simulator, or do you have other stuff that you enjoy as your rewards for the work you're putting in?
I don't have a lot of reward systems built in, because I have a very Spartan lifestyle.
Yep.
Right? Like, among things we've mentioned is, for example, being able to, like, get an hour in a Flight Simulator. I don't really have other video games. I was considering getting them just for the sake of having an opportunity to get that reward.
Yeah.
But for now, I don't want to encourage bad behavior.
Yeah.
In my opinion, so it's like, even though you need
so you want your rewards to also be healthy on top of being, like, you can't just say my reward today, crystal meth. Yeah, like, that's just a completely unhealthy, unsustainable thing for you to do. It's so you want to keep your rewards healthy on top of having the work be productive.
Exactly. It's but they still have to be rewards. You can't entirely subject yourself to your award today is an hour of studying. It's
Yeah.
great. It's great, but like,
But you say you enjoy it. Why is it? Why can't that be your work? No, I'm just messing with you. But
I wish I could. I wish I could do that to myself. But again, like the majority of my brain is still pretty primitive.
yes,
Because we're all animals. That's the thing. Only a frontal lobe really has an opportunity to think in a very analytical manner and make those decisions as to regulation and reward. So in a sense, like it's the philosophical concept of the government of the frontal lobe.
Yeah.
It makes up a very small portion of the brain, but it's taking up this dictatorship position where it's forcing the rest of the brain to comply with the new rules and instructions. So whatever the remainder of your brain wants or likes is subjected to an autocratic rule by the only analytical part of the brain that can make effective decisions. So whether, essentially, if you have a democratic system, right, then good luck to you studying or learning anything.
Yeah.
The majority of the brain doesn't really care about that.
So-
Instant gratification will capture it and keep
Yeah.
it going forever.
So do you try to leave, what role do emotions play in your system? Or do you kind of try to just avoid letting your emotions make decisions for you?
It's very dangerous, especially when it comes to flying or any critical type of work. Right? Emotions is typically like what kills a person.
It's true. But they're also designed as defense mechanisms for your body. Like they're designed to be, like, the way we evolved was to have those emotions to protect us. So why don't you want to use them at all?
Maybe so far I've been pretty unsuccessful in using them. And I'm willing to admit that. Is that my degree collection incentivizes or essentially prioritizes analytical and academic work. That comes down to essentially classical mechanics. You're solving physics problems, several of them. Like you find a system of coordinates, you apply your Lagrangian or Hamiltonian, right? You get your equation of motion. Like this is what I've been up to for recent years, right? I'm not a humanitarian student, which, like, yeah, if you're humanitarian, that's where really the emotional part comes into play. But I feel like I would be quite unsuccessful in that regard, just given the sheer amount of work I did in the scientific, in the pure science and the applied science realm of work. I've simply lost key emotional concepts. So like I was far more of an extrovert a few years back, maybe even 5 or 6, than I am right now. I'm steadily and I'm becoming closed off from society in a very dedicated manner, in a manner that is partially harmful, like living as a hermit. Because I simply see not much. No, I don't see a better alternative.
Okay.
I think I'm really missing out. Like, yes, like I went to I tried to understand like those mass street parties that Western organizes, and I wanted to see it. But then, when every single drink is alcoholic, like what am I going to do there? Like, there's just no place for me. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I think that I am also very interested in like the psychology of those mass events, like concerts and those mass street parties, or just parties in general where you're just like crowded into like a thing. And I also went through a kind of exploratory phase of that. And honestly, I think it's just for people who like, it's hard to get into the mind of someone who enjoys that. In my mind, I think it's just a pure dopamine and pleasure hit for them to just be in a social setting, and they just are happy to be around people and part of, like, it's a very humanistic thing to feel like you're part of the group, and people enjoy to feel like they fit in and belong. And so people will go there just to be like, yeah, there's people around me and I fit in. That could be completely wrong. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but like I try to get into the people's minds that I'm not like that and try to figure out what is kind of driving them to do that. What do you think it is that drives like those types of people?
Yes, there's definitely quite a grain of reason. Like, we are social creatures, and it makes sense to encourage group behavior. But at the same time, I'm just not finding very productive groups. Like engineering design teams, that's great. Maybe some other interest teams or clubs that take up events and are very effective at doing that, especially if it's competitive. I find that teams that are competitive, people are a lot more on point and a lot stricter when it comes to the time used, because you want to win a competition. Like if you're gonna have a team dinners and do things that are unrelated way too often and way too much, like how are you gonna perform in a competition? So competition definitely, I think, streamlines performance and makes the team effective. But then the more you're focused on the competition, the less you're focused on the social aspect of it, and everybody just kind of becomes a cog in the machine, and everybody just does their task. So the social aspect of it really disappears.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the reason why. Like I was listening to something about the world wars, and the people that were sort of on the front lines would constantly be drinking together the night before big battles, and it's interesting to me. And what the theorized reason for that is that if you're like you'll it's a humanistic thing to fight harder for people that you are closer to, if that makes sense. Like a grizzly bear will protect its cub because that's its family, and will go to the ends of the earth to protect it. And humans are very similar, where if this person means so much more to you, they will work harder on that team environment for that event, because they want the people they care about to win just as much as they want themselves to win, if that makes sense. Do you think that's a reason for a lot of the work hard, play hard stuff that goes on at Western?
We definitely have several forms of associations, and we can associate ourselves on a local level. That is, like, you go to a school and you have a system of parallel classes. The kids who go to other classes, right, they still go to your school, but they're in a parallel class. And when you see them, they're kind of foreign, because their class has a different teacher, they have different rules, routines, they have different inside jokes. You don't understand them as well as the kids from your class. So you kind of build this animosity, right? And then you go in a competition that's regional competition, and you have kids from all other schools. Now, that kid from your school is your kid.
Yeah.
Kids from other schools are foreign to you. And then you go in a national competition, and you care about the kids from your region, even though they went to different schools. They're not your kids as well, because those kids, they're coming from a different province. Like, come on, like that's like, they have different legal system. They have cégep. They're from Quebec. They speak a different language to you, right? But then you go on an international competition to Thailand or anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that kid who speaks French was from a different province, is your kid as well, because you come from the same country, or from the same continent, or maybe from the same planet.
Yeah.
That is what really makes us associate based on, like, you're more foreign than this guy at this point. So
I think we had this conversation last time about global unity, and do we need aliens to come for the whole actual globe to unite, so there is no outgroup?
Yeah, get something that's so different from you that everybody here is basically the same, like, in comparison. Yeah, it's very challenging to build a cosmopolitan society and be a globalist, because people have values that aren't just different. Sometimes they come into direct conflict in terms of how things should be done. And when it essentially becomes a fight of diasporas, where you find a very large quantity of people who share the interests the same as you, and then you kind of keep it in that small circle. Like, sometimes you could build a whole diaspora city, and then the mayor would be elected, and that would be the diaspora mayor. And then the whole municipality essentially just lives in its own way. Different municipality has its own way of living, and it's like, okay, now you're trying to have a provincial state of affairs, you want to have a national state of affairs. Unification, even like Canada is a great example of that, because this is what the world could look like if the world was just one nation. It's not very accurate representation, because people from certain countries move here a lot more often, or even from particular provinces within those countries. Then, like, we're not a very accurate global representation of humanity, but we are in some ways pretty close to it.
Yeah, there is a lot of different types of people. The problem that I see kind of with that is, even if I completely agree with you on one subject, that doesn't mean that I'm going to completely agree with you on another subject. And so I think all the way up and all the way down, there's always going to be disagreements. And so it's managing those conflicts in a kind of way that doesn't lead to war that we would need to accomplish. And that is a big task.
The art of diplomacy, the art of compromise, a lot of conversations to be had, and a lot of difficult decisions to be made. Like, we're all going to lose something, because you have to make like if you want to live in a society, you have to make certain sacrifices to your basic rights, right? And if your society becomes more diverse, you will have to make even more sacrifices in order to be able to accommodate and live with so many different people. You will have to learn how to accept things around you and not be so critical as to things that you don't like, because chances are, like, no matter what your perspective is and no matter what your cultural background or roots are, you're going to witness, like, you're going to be supportive of many things, but there will always be things that, like, are sharply in disagreement with the way you used to live. And I guess that's just the way I need to learn to live myself. I'm becoming a lot greater, but I'm becoming a lot better in terms of just understanding of other people, just trying to bring myself to the idea that all people are fundamentally the same. But there's definitely more work done to be on that part, because like, I want to learn other languages, understand other cultures, as if I was a representative of that culture. Like, really understand the fundamental reasons behind why different forms of behavior are formulated. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a particular nation. It can also be just a particular geographical feature of the land you come from. Like, if you come from a highland area, right, you will have a culture of honor, because, like, you have cattle. You can't really have a good agricultural community if you're coming in a, like, mountainous area. There's hardly any soil. It's difficult to grow something, so you're mostly a cattle farmer, right? And the thing about cattle is that those are not vegetables, right? Like, if you have vegetables or grain, it's a lot difficult to come in and steal one night.
Yeah.
But if you're a cattle farmer, you can wake up and realize that all of your cattle has been
Stolen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Same with sheep herders and shepherds and
precisely. So in order to exist in that environment, you need a culture of honor, eye for an eye. You take my cattle, and guess what's gonna happen next morning? I'm gonna get all of my people. We're gonna go over, right, and we're gonna make sure this doesn't happen again. And you have series of wars happening in the small highland area, where everybody just, like, because, oh, you killed my family members, so guess what's gonna happen to your family members?
Yeah.
Like, and it just keeps going back and forth, right? Versus, like, an agricultural society, you learn to be a lot more tolerant, right? Because, like, not gonna steal all your grain. Like, they might come in, like, and burn it down, but that's less likely to happen.
straight up malice.
You don't need that much. You don't need, like, the culture of honor doesn't develop to the same extent. You become more tolerant to aggression, like even direct aggression. That's the experiments they've been conducting, I believe, at Harvard, where they would collect students from all over the world and trace their origin, like if they come from a highland area or from an agricultural place, and they would try to see, if we insult you, and they would progressively, like, put them in situations where they get insulted, but, like, they don't know they're being experimented on. That's the thing. Like, somebody just, like, comes by you and, like, gives you a pretty strong insult, right? And they would keep doing it to many people and see, like, how are they going to react. And they did notice, that people who come from highland cultures are far less tolerant to aggression. If you come from the culture of honor, like, being insulted is far stricter. Will yield a far more aggressive response than somebody from whose roots are from an agricultural background. Even though they were born, like, in a big city, and their parents were born in a big city, and their grandparents were too. But hundreds of years back, that culture was formed, and they still retained it.
That's very
after so
interesting.
many years.
And I think that can go into kind of, I feel like it also kind of, I'd be curious to see what insults they use, because I feel like the specific insult kind of differs person to person. Like, if someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, fatty," that wouldn't really mean much to me. But if they were like, say something else to me, then that would make me kind of deal in a different manner. That would be interesting. I also find it very interesting, the difference in, like, tolerance, or difference in kind of perspective of someone who lives in a city versus someone who lives in a suburb versus someone who lives very rural, and how, say, the people in the big city are, like, it feels like they don't really like people. Like, if you go to New York and you bump into someone, it's, "Hey, watch it, fuck you." Like, that's how they escalate stuff in cities. Versus if you were in the rural area, every time you see someone, you're waving to them because everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see how, like, big cities, even though there is more people, can make you value humans less, if that makes sense.
I don't think you're valuing humans less. Like, I think, like, in terms of your perspective on humanity in general, or individuals in particular, like, I don't think I'm going to hate people more living in, like, Toronto area than I would in, like, living in a small village in Chatham, because my understanding it simply comes down to the volume of people at large that you face. Like, if you have 3 or 4 or 5, 6 million people living in the same like, very densely populated area, right? You learn very quickly to only talk and interact with a very small amount of them, right? If you're seeing 1,000 faces before you get to work, well, I don't think you're saying hi to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
You can try, but I don't know how long your emotional battery is going to last, right? If you can handle all those conversations, all those events, like your brain is just going to get overwhelmed, regardless if you're extrovert or introvert. So you learn like you're going to only say hi to people that you know very well. And sometimes even people you do know, you still wouldn't say hi to them. You're just gonna act like you don't notice them, because you don't want to have that interaction at that time. And I still notice that people go by and like sometimes we just don't introduce ourselves because guess what? It's a pretty busy day and I may not have time to introduce myself to everybody I know. So, but of course you have a conversation with them eventually, but it may not be today. But if you live in a small village, and the smaller the village gets, the tighter everybody knows everything about each other, right? That's the thing is there's only like 50, 100, 200, 500 people. Like you learn, that's basically your only social circle. And it generally doesn't change. And there's a lot of rumors that spread. So anything significant that happens, everybody knows about it. And it's a lot slower pace of life that happens, right? Like it's a lot less industrialized.
Where do you see yourself living in the future? Do you see yourself being a city person or a rural, or different times during your life, you think?
And the future is very unpredictable. It's unpredictable to the point that I've been having some interests in essentially just having a small log hut, like a log cabin in a very remote area, completely inaccessible by civilization. I would like an airstrip with a small airplane, and that would be the only way to get back and forth. So you couldn't get to me by road. No, unless you want to navigate a few hundred kilometers of Canadian shield. So remote that like whatever happens to the world,
Sound like northern Quebec or something like that?
Oh, there are places. Oh yeah, we have 10 million square kilometers of land here. Most of it is covered by quite a dense forest. You wouldn't really be able to grow your own food. The agriculture doesn't really work well in a Canadian shield, but there are certain things you can do.
Hunt. There is people who live like that. There are people who just go out there, have cabin, they'll hunt for their own food, and there's I forget, he was a professor at some Ivy League school and just decided, I'm done, and just went out and lived like that for many years. And
there was a professor of medicine, I think just a few days ago, when they were announcing that he got Nobel Prize. Nobody could get a hold of him because the guy was out in the woods doing I think he was doing an Appalachian Trail hike or something like that, but it was very remote.
And the people who do that report significantly higher life satisfaction than people who are constantly chasing the next thing, but that's not how human societies evolve, and so not everyone can do that. And
it's also there's also some issues with life expectancy at large, because having access to safe drinking water and actual medical help is what allows us to live so long. And if we don't have access to that, it may not be easy to maintain this lifestyle for a very long period of time, especially the older you get, right? Like life expectancy without like all the benefits of civilization and medical care and safe drinking water supply can be significantly reduced. So it's not a decision to be taken lightly unless you can have like a very sophisticated water purification measures. But then you're not really living in a log hut. You're living in some sort of remote bunker or base. Which is a totally different way of life. It's again, I'm not that big of a fan of that kind of lifestyle, but it definitely is a natural feeling to have, in my opinion, to try and escape all the problems we currently have with society, to try and just leave it all behind and live a more quieter life. But the alternative part is to try to be at the forefront of technological development, research and innovation, and try to see if you can do something about it.
And nudge it in the direction that you so desire.
Oh, that would be even like a slight nudge. Is far more than life's work, and most people never have an opportunity to do anything like that.
Absolutely.
So I'm more of a follower. It's just a large stream of water, and I'm just a droplet.
You're just a cog in the machine.
I want to believe that I'm different, but everybody wants to believe that they're different.
Oh, 100%.
That's the illusionary part. Is you think that your system is better, that you actually know what you're doing, or at least you're trying to know, that it's gonna get you somewhere. But just like Mario Ward's system, nothing is really guaranteed to you.
And there's the famous quote, it's idiots all the way up. So no one really knows what they're doing at the end of the day. And even if you have extreme expertise in one parallel of life, does not mean you'll have expertise in any of the other things that are going on.
Yeah, that's why I try to be a generalist. Is even though I sacrifice the very idea of becoming extremely proficient at something and being the best at it, I don't mind just having a sense of understanding of a wide variety of subjects, understanding them on a intermediate level at least, that kind of lets me be comfortable and not find the world so strange. And
Yeah.
because
At least be able to interact with someone about it and question what's,
hence why engineering is like, engineering devices have taken root almost everywhere. Like nothing can really be built or created without engineering now. So if you see the world through the eyes of the engineer, it becomes a lot more common, a lot more normal. Like you understand like how cars work, because the cars now have so many sensors and systems in there. And you understand how planes fly, you understand how ships sail, you understand how like electronic devices or computers work. Right? You might even be able to do some basic repairs or create some prototypes. Like the world becomes a lot more comfortable. Like you don't feel like, oh, humanity has like achieved some magic stuff, and you'll never understand like what is this going on.
Yeah.
And
Even if you do be generalized in engineering, there's still so much unfamiliar stuff to be like learned about in human interactions in psychology and biology and all of that type of stuff as well. Like there's so many things to learn about now, and the level of information that's out there is quite overwhelming. And I feel like that's why so many people now are getting so specific. Is one, that's what's rewarded in the workforce, is being very good, like the best at one very specific thing will be highly rewarded, because everyone that needs that certain thing done will come to you. But being a generalist is like, it's a lot harder to be rewarded in the specific workforce, and that's why a lot of people do specify down. But it is a lot more comfortable to live when you are kind of looking around and understanding what's going on from what you're seeing out there, and it's not just so foreign.
that could be a way in which my emotions manifest. Like I can be quite indecisive sometimes when you have to pick just one discipline. I'm like, well, the other is just as good. It's like I can't miss out on so much stuff. So like, how about I do both? Well, doing both involves not sleeping at all and like working multiple full-time jobs. But at the end of the day, it makes me feel more comfortable in a way. Just knowing that I did everything I could do, and I don't have a regret for it. Because if you just like narrow it down and specify like I'm doing this and nothing else, years later you can be like, oh, I should have done that instead, and you wouldn't actually know if that was a good decision or not, because that would have created a whole another pathway that could have also created infinite branches and infinite opportunities that may or may not have occurred to you, and you wouldn't know if you really would have benefited from having taken a drastically different decision far back. The emotions, coming back to the question you asked a long time ago, is like my problem with them is that they're variable, that they change, and any feeling can change as well. So if you make a decision based on a feeling or an emotion, especially a strong emotion, right? Chances are it will drastically change, and you will question that decision, especially if you made a decision that you wouldn't have made otherwise. Like whenever I make any sort of decision, I try to be very calm. I try to be very concentrated, and I try to do it I try to evaluate my options. And again, it's kind of like pretty bland, pretty neutral. But at the same time, I know that, okay, like this is what I did, this is why I did it. Like I can justify it to myself. If I did something very wrong, and under even impaired judgment, that would be very questionable. And that's another reason why I try to always keep my judgment in a very try to always keep a clear judgment. Like I wouldn't allow even a drop of alcohol or anything that can like change the way I perceive the world. That comes down to things like even that like caffeine or like even sleep deprivation. Like you will hallucinate with sleep deprivation. That is impaired judgment. Like, I will not allow myself to be subjected to that, or lest make any decision in that situation.
So how do you kind of manage, I'm not sure if you experience a lot of analysis paralysis, where it feels like you are analyzing a decision so much, you just take zero action, and zero action is an action in a lot of things, and it can be detrimental to just think about something too long. How do you prevent yourself from just getting caught up in trying to weigh the options so much, because you can go down some deep rabbit holes into comparison and just end up not making any decision at all. How do you prevent that?
Oh yeah, that's something that's very real and probably one of my greatest setbacks. Hopefully the interviewers don't watch this video.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but in reality, I'm pretty indecisive as a human being. Like I find that like if there's two equally good options, and I know that they're equally good, the first thing that comes to my mind is, can I do both? And when I was a 5-year-old, right, and there was 4 different types of candies in a giant bowl in a clothing store, I was like, I'm gonna try each variety.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking one candy and being satisfied, like, oh, I'm gonna try everything. But the world is too overwhelming to try and get a piece of everything in it. At some point you have to choose. And I still, even when I'm being put in pretty clear boundaries, tell you have to go here or you have to go here, like, okay, like you have a triple degree option. I'll take that, and I'll try to make my degrees as diverse, but at the same time as like it's a level of diversity, but at the same time coherence. In that I have electrical engineering, physics, computer science, and then on the other side I have mechanical engineering. So 2 engineering, 2 science, very different, but at the same time they have related skills. Because electrical engineering has a lot of physics in it, and a lot of computer science in both of them, but you have to realize things for software. So everything is very diverse, but if I need to bring those things together and actually get something done, that would be easier. Versus if I were just going the generalist route and picked, I don't know, like human science, history, and applied math, and then chemistry, like it's great. You have a very diverse selection. But okay, what can I do with that? So it's like, you want to keep broad pathways and try to make decisions that would benefit you while keeping a variety present. Of course, the difficult part comes down to when I'm in a grocery store. I have to choose between 2 different kinds of tomatoes. It's difficult. It's a difficult task, especially when you have to consider the price. You have to consider how fresh are the tomatoes. You have to consider like how long has it taken them to get here, like their origin, like how are they actually going to taste. So you have to like really take all those things into account, and ideally, like I mean, you could buy like all 3 kinds of tomatoes at the same time, but to me,
Why do you eat 3 tomatoes and you gotta like make an excuse to yeah. Yeah.
you want efficiency, but you want decisiveness, but you also want room to maneuver. And I think everything I've been doing in life is trying to keep a careful balance, and most of all acknowledge my shortcomings in those things, because studying several degrees at the same time is a shortcoming, and this is like I would never advise anybody to do that. Not because I'm trying to keep a competitive edge, because in reality that's exactly what I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Like spending 7-8 years doing undergraduate work, like this is like my spending my early 20s just rushing for textbooks at undergraduate level, like that's great, but it's like taking an extra year of primary school for no reason at all, or maybe taking several extra years of primary school. There's master's work, and then there's PhD work, and then there's the postgraduate work, which is far more in depth and far more effective, but that is specialization. I will have to make that commitment. And by doing this array of undergraduate degrees, I'm essentially keeping myself in this kindergarten while all of my peers are achieving stellar results in their graduate work. And this is happening because of my own indecisiveness.
Yeah.
Because I can't handle myself.
Yeah. That's one of those things where they call it the curse of competence, where you can see so many more variables than someone else, so it takes you that much longer to make the decision. Do you want to start heading back this way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's that much tougher to keep up with someone who may not be as smart as you, but can take more action faster, and more action means more experience, which means more learning, and it's tough. I'm curious how you kind of manage making risky, quote unquote, risky decisions, and what factor risk kind of plays in your life, do you think? Because for someone who does make a lot of decisions based off of a lot of logic, a lot of very risky things that have outsized returns also have a lot of upfront risks. And it's a lot harder to make those decisions when you can see those risks. Like, there's people who I've heard stories of a Taekwondo coach who he had students that wouldn't get nervous before a fight, and he would have students that get extremely nervous before a fight. And typically the ones that get more nervous are the smarter ones because they understand the risks that are facing them. And I'm curious what your experience with that is.
Oh, nervous, hence emotional.
Yeah.
If you're about to fight someone, I guess having some stronger, having some good levels of adrenaline wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
You really want to be concentrated, and you really want to be in that battle form. But when you're going into, like, again, because I've decided to subject myself to academic torture, going into an exam, you hardly think about being nervous. Like, the question is like, if you're nervous, it might actually impair your ability to answer the question very well, because again, like, it basically, like, parts of your brain, like the way the neural circuitry will start to operate when you're nervous. Like, you start breathing faster, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure goes up. Are you actually paying attention to the question? Have you explored all the opportunities? Have you explored all the ways? Like, even when I'm facing a question that I don't know how to answer, frankly, as professors love putting questions that they haven't covered and that I haven't found in a textbook. And
Yep.
it's always a matter of converse. It's always a matter of, like, do I blame myself? Do I blame someone else? I try to blame myself, but then I blame myself too much. And I try to kind of really streamline that ability. Okay, I don't know how to answer this question, so I turn myself into a scientist, an engineer. I'm like, okay, if I was the one inventing this problem, how would I approach it? Like, how would I outline a system of equations? How would I approach the solution? I write out all this. Like, I just bluntly, like, write down the steps on a piece of paper, and, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and then I do my best to do it. And quite often, if I don't get full marks because, like, I just invented my own solution, I get pretty close to having an accurate and correct answer. Because at the end of the day, like, there's a right way of doing it. In a logical environment, there's the true and the false. It's a binary world. Like, I don't write essays. So if you write an essay, like, depends on who evaluates and how they're feeling that day, how they woke up, how many essays have they evaluated before. Like, such a big deal. Like, if your essay is the first versus your essay is the middle versus your essay in the last, I can guarantee you, like, it will have different grades awarded to those essays. So I prefer an environment where if you did something wrong, like, there's a clear reason why, and you can make clear adjustments to fix that. And I try to keep emotions away from it. And coming back to your question of risk management, my policy so far has been risk avoidance. Again, I'm very critical of that as well. Like, I genuinely avoid risk, and I do it pretty well. Like, having a degree in mechanical and electrical engineering is a statement towards that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to the engineering field, so I'm going to do everything. I may not be good at it, but if a pathway opens up that I like in the future, I want to just grab it. Like, I want to go on a hiring website and just apply to every position. Electrical, mechanical, in the middle, mechatronics, just submit.
Yeah.
And if you interview me, I'm gonna, like, read up a bunch of materials, right? Learn, develop, because interviews take months from the time of application. You can really learn and specify in that subject. Maybe even do a few projects on the side and build up a portfolio. And then come into your employer and be like, oh, like, yes, I've studied a lot of weird things that are completely unrelated to this position. But, in the recent months, I've succumbed to the reality of our world. I've changed my behavior, and I'm going to be a good boy here. This is what I did, and please hire me. Of course, they probably won't, but that's the sacrifice I've had to make. Because essentially, like, in a world that's hyper-competitive, having no competitive edge means that almost anybody who is a specialist will be offered to go on a second interview or will be offered a position. Like, generalists are only successful in a very limited spectrum of events, but what you get instead is stability, right? I didn't put all the eggs in one basket. Like, I can maintain a more or less stable approach to things. Again, like, if I would have taken, like, a lot more risk and taken up a very prospective and a specialized position, chances are it would have been a lot easier to get a job, especially if it was in demand when I graduated. There's definitely a backlog, as people who think they take risk may not actually be taking that much risk. As what motivates us to take those degrees in engineering or science? We really follow those who were in the Ivy League schools 10 years, 20 years ago and made that decision. But when they were making those decisions, it was very competitive, and, like, the demand was extremely high. So the job was almost a given. Like in fact, computer science, you would be able to get a job even without a degree in most cases. Like just experience was sufficient years ago. But the world has changed. Like you now have graduates from prestigious schools not having an offer. Because where's your 5 years of experience on an entry-level position? You don't have that. Well, guess what? This is the world we live in. So,
100%.
did you really take risk, or did you just follow the trusted advice of somebody who actually made it?
Yeah.
Right? There's things like people who made it years ago. They can give you great advice. I would have worked perfectly if you grew up with them.
Exactly.
Now that they've accomplished everything and the world has changed, you can try to follow their advice, but there's no guarantee that you're going to arrive to the same location, even if you are just as good, if not better than them.
Yeah. Best case scenario, you're the second best them, and it's no good in. It's also, I find it interesting when, say, you're reading autobiographies of someone who's very old, and they're trying to kind of leave what they did for the next generation and help them out. You're so far along in your journey at that point that it's hard to remember where you were on like someone who's writing an autobiography at 75. It's going to be really tough for them to remember what they were doing at 22, 23. And so they will kind of write or tell what they're doing maybe at 50 or 60, which doesn't apply to you when you're 22, 23. And it's definitely tough to take the advice of someone from the past that it's a completely different world now, and the world is changing faster than it ever has because it's an accelerating world. And yeah, it's very, very tough. I'm curious though, on the risk side, because if something would fail 9 times out of 10, but would give you an 100x return if you got it that 1 out of 10 times, that's something you would want to do. And it's hard to figure out what things in life will give those outsized returns. Do you kind of think about what would give you outsized returns at all, or do you kind of just want to get as much volume done of work right now as possible, as to be so general that you can just hop on something that you're interested in when it comes up in the future? You're just kind of setting yourself up to like giving yourself a very broad base to build up quicker on in the future.
I don't know if I am giving myself a broad base.
No?
2 degrees could have been, like most people who are having difficulty specializing, just pick 2 degrees and get them done in 5 years. That's a more effective way of doing it. So am I really setting myself up, or am I just wasting time here? Probably a mix of both. I could spend my entire life in a futile attempt to generalize and end up nowhere. So it's difficult to tell what's going to happen, and really, like, it's all a gamble, right? Like, we have certain technologies that are emerging, so if you're able to throw and bet everything on it, there's definitely, you will get those outsized returns if you are one of those few successful ones. The problem is that, like, our own perception of those things is very biased and very warped, because we love seeing those few successful kinds who have made it all the way through, but we don't really look at those who haven't made it. And I think that is the single biggest mistake, like the paradox of a survivor, right? Like, for example, astronaut selection for Canada, out of 5,000 applicants, they select only 2 people, right? You'd love to see the profile of the 2 great selected ones. You're like, this is what I have to do. But then, the Canadian Space Agency was kind enough to publish the profiles of the top 64 astronaut candidates. And when you look at all 64 profiles, you start to realize that those who weren't selected, you really wonder why weren't they selected. Like, sometimes you see more degrees, more specialized qualifications, other pretty incredible skills, or even the top 16, like, where everybody is so tight, like in terms of scores. Everything is so close together. Everybody is almost the same, and yet you have to make that decision. And you are gonna say that, okay, 2 people here, you're going to space. Everybody else, I'm sorry, like, even though you're almost just as good, at least according to our scores, you can't give an opportunity to everybody. So you have people who have dedicated their life just as much, did the same if not more work to get there, and they end up essentially with a polite refusal. Not like astronaut competition, I think, is the epitome of that, like, because it publishes those, it's a public competition, right, for being able to go to space, right? There's, like, Google has, like, what, thousands of applicants per position, right? They behave in a similar manner, right? A lot of people have similar qualifications to you. They have similar experience. They have similar set of skills and similar mindset as well. How will you select?
I think that's from my perspective of if I was in the role of the person who has to make that very tough decision, it would, at the end of the day, come down to something that is very subjective, and that would be, quote unquote, the emotional intelligence of the applicants, of when you actually interview them, how do they interact with each other, like how, it's such a subjective thing to make the decision on, but I feel like at the end of the day, because everyone is meeting and exceeding those qualifications on paper, at the end of the day, you can't make that decision just on that paper stuff. And that's, for me, why I am trying to learn a lot more right now about human interaction and emotional intelligence and sociability and everything like that. And yeah, it's at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what would rule those decisions. I don't know if that's how you would see it as well, but that's kind of how I see it right now.
It's like interview is just an extension of paper. This is your ability to face the potential employer.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, we come down back to the same. Like we take out our drums and start beating drums and playing a melody, trying to make ourselves appear nice
Mm-hmm.
and present ourselves in the best possible light from all angles. We try to kind of show an edge. But the thing is that it all comes with a standard package of advice and interview preparation guidelines
Mm-hmm.
that is shared and enjoyed by essentially everybody. Everybody will take out similar drums and play a similar song.
Mm-hmm.
And some people may have a music talent on that interview, right? But at the end of the day, you will still end up with a similar set of interviews.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you might notice that, like, you know, and that's another paradox, is that, you know, you're selecting based on social skills and interaction. But if you're hiring for an engineering position that requires a critical skill, right, then you have to, like, you're hiring somebody for qualities that are almost the opposite or completely unrelated to what the job expects you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like you have to train not for the job you're going to perform, but you have to train for selection.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something like for astronaut selection or for medical school, people spend so many years of their life, so much effort, so much commitment, like drafting those resumes from a very young age, right? Just for the selection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody does that. Not for the eventual, like what the selection competition has gotten so fierce that once you actually get selected, life becomes a lot easier. People are extremely overqualified for the jobs they're applying for. And that is the life we have to enjoy. The book I've been reading, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell,
Yep.
it takes an interesting edge on that approach. What they offer instead is to just have a lottery
Yeah.
for like Ivy League universities. Because, I mean, you have 4,000 applications, each one with a 4.0 GPA, a valedictorian, right? Team captain of my local football team, won this national math competition, right? Everybody has one of those parchments coming up with them, right? Everybody has that 1560, 1600 SAT score. What more can you ask, right? At this point, you start like looking into like the ChatGPT written essay, like which ChatGPT prompt was a better iteration, who has the better subscription service, right? Like, just
that
have a
is
lottery.
the reality.
If you have 2,000 candidates who are almost equal in almost every aspect, right? And you have 1,000 spots, just give them a 50% chance. You know, if you're perfect, just apply next year and keep applying. You know, life may be harsh to you, and you may not get it, but maybe you can apply to more lotteries, right? And eventually, like, there will be a lottery that you'll score. Maybe you can like defer it and wait next year, right? So you kind of introduce the randomness to it.
Yeah. That's
but
like,
at least like you remove the human aspect out of it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
remove the human bias.
For sure. That's like there's an old meme of hiring managers that just take their stack of resumes, throw half of them out, and say you have to be lucky to work here.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality of it. The qualifications aren't gonna be what gets you. It's at the end of the day just how much volume can you put out and hope to get something back in the world. And Yeah, I think I heard a story of NASA's selection process. They brought some psychologist in to try to, when they were down to their, say, final 16 or 8 candidates or whatever, and they had to make that decision of who actually gets to go up to the International Space Station, and they were trying to figure out what could they do to make that decision better from the human aspect. And it was, I don't know if I'll get this 100% correct, but basically while they came in, the interviewer would do something quote unquote silly, like they would drop a bunch of papers or spill their coffee or something like that, and they would be looking at the reaction of how the candidate that came in would react, and they would make the thing and then make a big ho ho ho, like make a big thing about it. And if the person would just be like ha ha ha, ha and then come up and like not kind of address the elephant in the room, they would not select that person. It would be the people who would match the energy and offer to help out or do that like thing, and that's what would kind of disqualify people, would be doing subtle things like that and assessing their reaction. And I think it's crazy that it comes to that, but that's how they would make the decisions. I think that was in the 2000s or something like that.
Even that is quite unfair.
Yeah.
Because chances are,
It depends on the day of like, it depends how you're feeling. And
yeah, you might think it's a feeling thing, but like, people know that they're being selected. And some people might actually have the intellectual threshold, or maybe like something, they observed some sort of like cue, or they've had a sudden realization that this is a test as well.
yeah,
And it would have given you a perfectly, streamlined, well worked on test response.
yeah,
Or, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to be in your place tonight.
yeah,
How can I assist you?
yeah,
Right? Don't worry about my $2,000 jacket and my $5,000 watch. That's nothing. I'm here to help you.
exactly.
Right? So others may not have realized, like, you're trying to make a person drop their mask.
Yeah.
Maybe like some people, but most people are, instead they're gonna put on a mask prepared for that specific situation. And the thing is, like, we're all wearing so many mask layers now that I've find myself not knowing what I'm thinking about or my own opinions about subjects. What I'm telling you is a carefully refined and edited version of my thoughts that I sometimes don't understand myself. Like, if you ask me to give you a narrative on the current events, I'm going to give you everything as best as I can in line with our current most progressive policies and methods, right? And I'm going to believe what I say, sincerely believe that. But what my mind actually thinks, I don't know, like, it hides from myself.
Yeah.
Because like, sometimes admitting to yourself that you're different or you have a different opinion that differs from what majority of people think is dangerous even to yourself, because then you start seeing yourself as an outcast. And even though sometimes it can have its own certain benefits, it comes with quite a volume of risk
Yeah.
associated with that as well, and it's dangerous to be different.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous game, but at the same time, I feel like people out there are, I don't even know what this means to a lot of people, but it seems like they're striving for authenticity. They want to see someone who's authentic. They love seeing that. But everyone, socialization is a game of putting a mask on in a way.
Yes.
Like that's the whole point of being punished for biting someone when you're a child. If you're a biter, you get punished so that you don't do that, even though that's quote unquote your natural way of living would be to bite people. But you get socialized out of it. And that is kind of like not being quote unquote true to yourself anymore. And it's a very interesting game that gets played when people go out and try to discover themselves. Like, that's such a, what does that even mean? Discover yourself. Like, yeah, it's a very tough thing to wrestle with, because odds are, even though you have the most context of your life, you're the one who's lived it, you don't even truly know yourself, because there is so many influences of the way that you learn is from stories, and other people wrote those stories, other people put their own twists on those stories, and you're learning from them. And it is almost kind of like a hive mind aspect to humanity, but Yeah. It's,
Oh,
it's tough to really figure out what you actually think, because there are a lot of pressures at play to think, quote unquote, the right thing. And that's how so many crazy things can come mainstream, because the vocal minority kind of pressures the silent majority into thinking a certain way because they want to adhere to what they're hearing out in the world.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and at the same time the great curse. Our instincts haven't gone anywhere, right? Like, you have 7 billion people living, but the average GDP per capita this year is around $13,000, right? So in Canada we are far above that number metric, but people living here are the same.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most of us come from parts of the world where we're extremely unfortunate, and like even basic necessities are not readily available to people. And you think about it, and it's like, well, people there aren't different. Why are some countries so wealthy and some countries are struggling so much? If people are the same, like, why can you have a nation with very low levels of corruption, and you have a nation that's extremely corrupt? But people in power are like, they're people, right? Like, we don't have AI governments yet, so.
Yet.
what makes that happen is what always fascinated me. Like, theoretically, if people behave in a similar manner under similar circumstances, you would have, a wide variety of countries, but in every country you would have similar levels of economic progress, similar levels of academic achievement. But it's not the case. In some, being born in a single country can be a verdict. That means you will hardly amount to anything, right? Because you just don't have the opportunities or institutions available to train. You will never be able to receive assistance or support that would allow you to realize your dreams. Most people will have those dreams and will have those skills. Like, so how many scientists, engineers are there who are not able to realize their potential, to discover new things, to develop, to achieve and break new records? Because simply the environment would not let them. Right? And here we've tried very hard to build the environment that allows you to achieve all of your aspirations, reach your wildest dreams. But even here, the day-to-day burden, like all the tasks you still have to do, all the distractions you face in the world, they detract you from being able to become that better version of yourself, be able to realize at least a part of those things. And it's a very difficult thing. Is like a lot of us have to make sacrifices, and those sacrifices will essentially put us into boundaries that can prevent us from achieving those things we could have otherwise achieved. Like, I wouldn't mind going on a few 100-kilometer hike right now if I didn't have midterms to prepare for, if I didn't have expeditions coming up, like sail, or if I simply wasn't caught up in the daily routine of quizzes and exams and evaluations that would come with no end. And it's like, it develops you, no doubt. But when you do it for years on end, you kind of sometimes forget why you do it to begin with.
Absolutely. And it's such a interesting thing, the way that we're just there's things that we want to do, and there's things that we've committed ourselves to do, and you can't always just work with what you want to do. That's an unproductive way of living. And yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, that we aren't going to get to do everything we want to do, and we have to be very selective. And yeah, it always makes me wonder, what do people just get lucky, the people who figure out what they want in life and chase after it and make it there? Do they just get lucky to be living in that specific, being born into that specific area, having the people around them, having the discernment to choose what they want to do? Like, or is that a skill that can be developed? It's hard to say whether or not stuff is a skill that can be developed, or if it's just you got a lucky roll of the dice. And I try to choose the fact that everything is a skill that can be learned, but at the end of the day, opportunity, it does require preparation, but also some people just never get the opportunity.
Or you get an opportunity, but you can't realize it. It comes down to the skill. It's I want to go down to the benign idea that it's just a combination of things, but it's a little bit more intertwined than that. It's like you can spend your whole life training and training very hard and being the best, and then maybe you get an injury that prevents you from realizing all your ambitions, which happens to a lot of athletes. Like you could say, oh, maybe that was a mistake on your part, like you should have like done some injury prevention things, or maybe would have been more careful with yourself. But sometimes things are outside of your control, which is something I really don't like to admit, because my goal is to bring everything within my control, to be able to have everything evaluated, planned for, and predicted, and then just have life go on as a as a compiling program in my terminal. Right, so that I get the expected output. But the thing is that the output isn't going to be expected. There's a very low chance of me going further than I expected and surpassing even my greatest ambitions. But in most cases, there's going to be some sort of obstacle that I wouldn't have expected to be there that will stop me, or something else that will come up, or something that will distract me and keep me short, or maybe detract me from attending a particular competition or event, or completing another project, or applying for a particular job. All those things are always there. But I like to aim to do things that are difficult, that are challenging in many aspects, and hopefully they're multifaceted, and have not necessarily a great reward behind them, but definitely give you a sense of purpose. Like going to space, for example, isn't necessarily a great reward. You're still in the very early stages of space colonization, so it's kind of like playing a game. Because in reality, what you should be trying to do is building more sophisticated and more advanced systems, and trying to use them to further the advances, the technological advances of humanity. And much work is being done on that front. So if you're spending your time, just trying to go on a fun adventure, that's great. But what kind of purpose will you be realizing in that case?
Do you think that do you try to model your life off of kind of doing things for your own set purpose? Is that kind of what everything's in service of, is the purpose that you've given yourself? Or do you think there's an external purpose of your life, which is just betterment of society in general? Or is it kind of multifaceted?
The question is, does the society want to be bettered? Like, if somebody actually came about and told you what you have to do to be better, would you be willing to listen to them? On the one hand, like they're doing it in your favor. Like, imagine like your parents, right? Like, they act and they try to do things that are actually going to be for your own benefit, even when you when you really don't like that. So if I were to come about here, like, oh, I have discovered this recipe for success and I can better society. Well, society may not want to be bettered. Like, you may not want to have an oil pipeline on your land, not because, like, even though you're missing out on certain like financial or economic rewards you may get out of it, like, you just don't like pipelines for some reason, and you may not want to develop. That's the thing, is like, we're still animals at the end of the day. We may not want that level of development and sacrifice to be made. It's like, yes, if like, maybe I should just start eating protein powder and exercising all the time, and just while doing that, also have like a clipboard with physics questions I'll be solving while on a run or training for an ultra marathon. That is a life I could be leading, but how much are you going to enjoy eating protein powder 24/7, or just like condensed nutrients that are going to be for your own good? Like, sometimes something is so for your own good that you don't want to have it anymore. You're done with this self-improvement guideline. It's like, that's the thing, is like, so much of society nowadays has responded to the social changes, and there's a big push in like this stoicism and discipline, and everybody talks about it, and there's so many podcasts, so many discussions, like people like David Goggins really come to light in this world. It's like, oh, this is a perfect person to admire. You have Miyamoto Musashi, and his books suddenly become very popular. Like 100 years ago, nobody would have cared about, like, oh, some samurai was pretty good, okay, well, whatever. Right, nowadays, like, he's a legend, because we need to admire like the icons of discipline. But discipline in and of itself is quite a struggle. Like, that's the thing, is like, not only you're doing something that's difficult, like doing it itself is already being difficult. It's very monotonous work that requires like a hard example of self-control, right? Like, self-control is essentially you're denying your brain what it wants. You're fighting yourself. And typically, like, fighting yourself over a prolonged period of time will yield to forms of self-destruction, right? Because you have to, but at the same time, like, the other alternative was like, oh, just accept yourself the way you are.
Yeah.
Just, live the life you want, like, the pure hedonist approach. Sure, you can do that too, but there's the frontal lobe may not like that, but the rest of the brain is happy about it. My goal with my system is just to try to bring it to some sort of like functionable balance, where I can advance without destroying myself too much. Still destroy myself, but like not tear myself apart.
Yeah, well, you can think about it as like a muscle where you have to get some micro tears in the muscle to get it to grow, but you can't just fucking cut your bicep in half and expect it to grow. It's not how it works. There is a sort of balance to life of how hard can you push yourself and then pull back a little bit and then push yourself again, and then that's how you grow. And you were talking about how you don't like the fact that the locus of control over your life is not complete. There is always uncertainty that's inherent in the human condition, in the world. There's a vast amount of uncertainty. How do you try to bring more agency in your life where you get to be the one in control? Because I feel like you, from my perspective, you are very high agency. How do you try to like captivate that and make sure that you don't let things kind of get away from you for what is in your control?
And because the schedule used to be very rigid, and the things I used to do, like when you go to work, as a security guard, you just work your night shift. And if the situation is you try to deal with minimum risk while keeping all the work requirements complete, you just go home, you get enough sleep, you study enough. Like you kind of learn, you learn the numbers, right? You learn, like if the course is difficult, like this is the amount of hours I probably have to put into it. This is probably the amount of questions I have to solve. This is the difficulty of the questions. You start getting a general hang of it, and the better your understanding of it, and the more compliant you are with yourself, the higher the likelihood of success in that regard. So everything is becoming like numbers based when you're in the logical sphere. And same thing with like running. Like again, you look at like your genetic makeup, like how like literally the length of your legs. Like, I mean, it's basic science, right? Like people who are genetically different will have different predispositions to different sports. Somebody who's a good runner, well, good luck to them being a good swimmer, right? Like same thing. Like how long are your legs? How long are your arms compared to like the larger torso, right? How would that proportionality influence your ability to do pull-ups? And you have people like who have those different physical results. Again, would you really call that uncertainty? Like you can, like, I mean, I don't want to sound like somebody who, what do they call it now? Social engineering, right? Like I want to be one of those people, but it becomes clear to me that if my genetic makeup is this, if I am particularly suited for certain types of sports, then this is the amount of training that will require to perform at this level in a competition. This is the amount of training it will require to perform in a different kind of sport. And certain sports I'm so unsuited towards that like the volume of training will be required would be very substantial just to achieve some mediocre results. So, those calculations give me a sense of certainty, not a complete certainty. It improves my understanding of what needs to happen. Like it's not a surprise that I lose a game, or if I've, God forbid, ever fail a quiz. That would be terrible. But like that gives me a certainty that this is what needs to be done for that to happen. Like if I somehow don't do as well as I expected, I know the reason why. I know that like this is what should have been done, that wasn't done, and this is the life I have to face. Like, so that's the agency part of it.
Yeah.
The goal, of course, is to bring everything under control, but do it in a way that doesn't mean like calculating everything, calculating like the weather conditions. Like, yes, when you're flying out, you have to know the weather. But if I'm just gonna go over to a lecture, I just need an umbrella if there's too many clouds in the sky. That's enough agency in there to be able to get there, right? That's how I look at it. And I think what is the ultimate result, at least in my line of work, is achieving that level of stability and coherence. Like stop acting against your own self-interests, because if the brain generates an an adverse response to the system, starts acting contrary to my own values.
Yep.
How do I handle that? And how do I always act in my own self-interest? Or like, I want to sound like selfish, but like in the self-interest of my own development.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the self-interest of the development of society, but at the same time in a way that benefits people who want to be benefited and doesn't negatively impact those who don't want to be negatively impacted.
Yeah. Well, it's always easier to paddle downstream than it is upstream. You want to figure out a way that you can live your life where you are, quote unquote, paddling downstream and moving with how you want to be. You're not, if you're constantly in a battle with yourself, like you said, then it's going to be that much harder. There's going to need to be that much more work you put in the quote unquote paddling of your life to get to where you want to go. You can either work harder or choose a different spot where you want to end up. And it's very, very much, you want to kind of orient yourself with how you naturally are and how you naturally will act, which is in service of yourself and your goals. I'm curious, have you been working any more on, I remember last time you were saying you're working on a writing of fiction that kind of outlines your way of thoughts. How's that writing going?
Yeah, well, there's two pieces, right? Like as the advice I have received from a history major many years ago is that people don't really like reading nonfiction stuff.
Yeah.
So I have essentially a form of tractate that explains the fundamental principles of, I think, disciplines. It's like the Nepomniashchism, like being a Nepomniashchy, a theory and practice, which outlines the basic the fundamental principles that make me who I am. So there's a supreme text that I wrote that I can follow.
Yeah.
And over the years, I can look back and I can see like what were those fundamental principles that I think are imperative that I follow no matter what.
Yeah.
But there's also a general writing of fiction that embodies those disciplines and brings them into a form that is convenient for people to read if it ever gets published. I hope it will.
Yeah.
But I've made some significant progress to it. But it's a multi-year line of work.
Yeah.
Most of the time I just write short stories that sometimes get integrated into it. Sometimes they're left as their own pieces of writing. Because, again, as somebody who studies in the academic field, writing poetry or fiction or non-fiction is something that is more of a tangential development skill than something that directly benefits my current aspirations. So it's something I keep as a memory or as a statement that although I'm not currently studying or effectively developing myself in those aspects, I still want to keep them around. Just like I have a piano keyboard at my house. It's like I'm not a renowned musician, unlike some of my peers who are like younger than me and they win prestigious international competitions. Right? When I look at the length of my fingers, I think about it. No matter how much you practice, like your fingers wouldn't get much longer. So you have to really learn how to achieve extreme results with what you have. You know, you have what you have. You work with it.
It's true.
So I still play piano, and I have a drawing canvas. I practice different styles of drawing and painting because I try to develop those skills as well. Right, writing, drawing, music, sports, of course. Like, you know, the all-rounded development. And I think that is the mental image that I'm trying to pursue. That all-rounded development. Because I feel like that was the utopian idea of a human being. Is like, you know, you develop yourself in all disciplines, and you become proficient at them. Like people who are high cultured, people who read a lot and know and can discuss a variety of topics on an intellectually stimulating level. That like you really want to listen to them, even when they talk about something that's unrelated, like to their field of interest. So for me, it's a work in progress that hopefully will yield some tangible results in the future. So
that's kind of like the polymath approach. Where did you get that from? Where do you think you got that from? Was that Miyamoto Musashi, or is that just kind of who you admire in life as people that are more coherent in many different subjects? Where do you think you developed that yearning to be kind of competent in so many different wide variety of subjects?
Miyamoto Musashi wrote The Way of the Sword. So he said that once you become a master of the sword, of the art of the sword, you can master all the other aspects, because those elements of mastery that you've learned and developed in yourself, you can now transfer to the other disciplines, and they would fall to you in a much easier manner than if you were to not have mastery acclaimed. It's like he says that if you're a master, then you're a master. You can master all other aspects with greater ease than if you were somebody who had not achieved that perspective. Again, I'm not a master, so I cannot tell if that works or not. Maybe if one day I do. I don't really know what it means to be a master. That's the thing, is like it's a very broad definition.
Yeah, master's degree is kind of, there's people that have master's degrees that I wouldn't consider masters
Yes.
of specific things.
Well, there's
So
different
it's-
kinds, right? Like there's the master as an academic degree, and a master as a human being who is highly accomplished, who is
Yeah.
like the master of the field or whatever discipline they're studying. So that's something to look forward to, and something to think about. Like when do you realize that you're like, that accomplished, that you can be considered a master of a field? Like, do you have to win certain competition? Do you have to perform on a certain level? Like have a specific skill that can only be performed by somebody who is a master? All those things are like, some questions that still have to be answered, and they probably wouldn't get a particularly unambiguous response. Chances are it will still be quite shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, this is something pulling from a lot of the content that I consume is very business related, so this kind of relates to that. But there was a guy who was a serial entrepreneur where he had, say, like 50 different companies that he had like his toes in, and was kind of spreading himself very thin. He was trying to get into so many of his different interests, and he was asking a mentor, like, how do I like keep progressing? How do I get even more and more going on? And what the guy said is, how easy would it be if you just chose the one business that you were interested in, dropped the other 49, got rid of them in whatever way you could, and just focused on that one specific thing? How much easier would that be for you to, say, double, triple, quadruple that one specific thing? And the guy said it was a no-brainer, that it would be so much easier to master that one specific thing first. And I'm curious what you think of the people who devote themselves to focus on one specific subject for a longer time to try to master that specific thing. And then once they've mastered it to their personal satisfaction, then they can move into other things or double down on it, keep going down that one rabbit hole. What do you think about the path of kind of going very focused on one specific thing instead of generalizing all at once, but doing one thing specifically for a longer period of time, developing that skill, and then trying to develop the other skills?
That's how it should be,
That's how it should be.
of course. Like right now, I focus on studies of computer science and physics. This semester I have no engineering courses, except for some petty projects and team contributions. Most of my work is directly in the science discipline. Next semester, it will be the opposite. I'll go back to engineering, and all of my attention, all of my effort, and all of my devotion will be to engineering and engineering alone. Because we can't multitask as species, no matter what people tell you. The brain can really only capture and focus on one aspect, or be most productive when it focuses on one. As soon as you start doing two things, productivity falls down, and net volume of work completed falls down as well. So it's important that only one task is being prioritized at the given moment, that you're not trying to get everything done all at once, because that leads nowhere, pretty much. You'll have a melange in your brain that just doesn't create anything coherent. Hence why I detest the short form content. I don't like being focused on, or my attention being torn apart on many different fields. Yes. And once you devote all of yourself to one aspect, you start to see other disciplines come into play, work and research from other subjects introduced, because chances are you're going to take inspiration from other fields, right? Einstein used to love going out for a walk, right? How much did that influence his physics research? And because those concepts that he thought about, the relativity of space and time, like, you really had to think about it, and you really had to derive that from somewhere. You know, if you're just reading the physics textbook, you are focused on what has already been derived. To derive something yourself, it requires careful observation and being able to connect the dots in places where people haven't seen them before. Like seeing things as, like just being able to see something, like recognizing cues, recognizing emotions, being able to read intent or facial expressions is so difficult, right? It takes a lot of concentration just to be able to do that. I think, yes, focus on one task, and but learn how to integrate that into the larger area of work, so that the work still gets done, but the focus is not diluted.
Do you think the 4-month time scale that university kind of imposes on you is the correct time scale to put your focus in on one specific subject, or do you think it would be more optimal if you could have a different time scale to specify on one thing at a time?
And that's what we adapted to. Some subjects would take me double time, double the amount of time to learn, and I have to kind of condense it and learn how to deal with the framework I've been introduced to. Right? Like you can run courses in a way where you have a whole year to just do one course, or you, like Arizona State, for example, right? You have 2 months per course, so the courses run at double the pace than what it is in a general university framework format. Right? So different universities have a different approach to it, which forces me to adapt in a different way. And I think this really is a question of adaptability, not just in terms of studying, but also in terms of the future we're heading towards. Things will change, and they will change significantly. The question isn't whether or not we should accept or refuse the change. The question is, how are we going to adapt? People are going to adapt in different ways. Some people, like for example, there's a lot of push to go into like, skilled trades work, right? So some people are like, okay, if academics aren't going to pay out very well, if job security isn't guaranteed, let's go to somewhere where it is guaranteed. And that's one way of dealing with it. Another way is to become extremely competitive and look for any edge you can get on anybody else. And just, this is what a lot of people do as well. There's also maybe perhaps a third approach. Try to find something else that hasn't been done before, try to do that. Like, again, like here you can pretty much do whatever you want, as long as you're compliant with the laws and I guess society doesn't reprimand you too much. You can pretty much do whatever. And this thing is like you have a wide array of options available for you, and you have to make a conscious decision to follow through with that option and head towards that way. And in the progress, learn how to adapt, shift and change your behavior. That's the thing is like people change, but they also don't change. In some ways, people remain the same. Is that they fail to adapt, and failure to adapt, I think, is the single biggest verdict, and one of the biggest things I'm afraid of is that the world is going to change. People are going to wake up, and they're going to be different, and I won't be. This is like one of those things with social media, right? If I'm like, new introductions, the way people receive and process information, the way people interact, and I'm just saying, no, I want to be a part of that. Okay, well, it's fine, but clearly this is a lack of adaptation on my part. I'm refusing to adapt.
Well, yeah, that's the philosophical theory as to why it's necessary for humans to die is because as you get older, your adaptability to the new systems, humans inherently love homeostasis and love just having no change, but the world is dynamic, the world is changing and evolving, and that's kind of, as sad as it is, the reason that people need to die when they get older is that you need that new way of thinking, that development, that ability to adapt, to move forward. And that's, I feel like something that, like, if I ever get existential about death, I can understand that that's how the world needs to work. And the people that are like trying to prevent death, that's fantastic. But prolonging life, this is one of Elon Musk's theories, is that prolonging life will not advance society as faster as like developing technologies and just accepting the fact that after 100 years, you're going to be gone. You're not going to be productive to society anymore. I don't know what you think about that, but that's...
No, quite. This is where our paths split. Like, I agree with you on some parts, right? Like the idea that you have people who have essentially prolonged their power, not necessarily just their life, right? If you live to 100 years and you spend that 50 years of that holding a senior executive position, where you are, managing the decisions of the company, and like the world has changed, you're back in your old ways, but people have moved on since, right? Like, how are you benefiting society at this point? Like, maybe you should allow somebody newer to get a hang of things. But death is a permanent solution, and I'm not a fan of things you can. I'm not a fan of irreversible things. I like to keep
I get
bridges.
that sense from you. Yeah.
Because when you start burning bridges behind you, right, you become locked in to where you're at. While if environment around you changes, you have the opportunity to go back and maybe reassess. Right, that's important. I think life is very valuable in its own sense, and again, like you can't really put a price tag on life. Insurance companies may be trying to do that. But,
Yep.
in my opinion, you can't really evaluate, because you're basically telling if this is how much value you brought to society. This is how much you're worth, right? I don't want to be a product, and I don't want to treat other human beings as products. I never want to have this form of mindset, because I think it's also very destructive to society. Right now, you're basically treating society as a product, as a common good. That shouldn't be the case. So, if life is being cherished as a good, I think we should take appropriate measures to preserve it, right, to treat and find cures for various forms of disease, but also look for ways to extend it in ways that allow people who want to live longer and do more things. Because yes, some people, they become very stubborn in their ways, including, like, as you age, I guess you become more firmly rooted in your ways, and you're becoming less receptive to the change. I mean, I've already become quite aggressive. Not necessarily emotionally aggressive, but I've had this extreme level of denial. Some of the new changes that I don't like, like the push towards greater informality, the push towards the way information is being shared and distributed, the push towards newer forms of communication, newer forms of interaction. That change is visible everywhere, not just media, but also like the new architecture that's being constructed, right? Like the way people talk, the way people think, the decisions and the way those decisions are being made, the products that are being generated to suit that demand. But the beauty of it is that, when it comes to any business, you will create products that will deal with any demand. If you're willing to revolt against capitalism, the capitalist society will be more than happy to sell you everything you need to fight against itself.
Yeah.
Like, that's the beauty of it, is that everybody will be accommodated, whether you like the system or whether you hate the system, right? Like, you'll be given a printed shirt that says "I hate the system."
Exactly.
And you'll be sold it for $19.99.
That's,
Right? So
yep. That's awesome. Yeah.
that's the way we are. And so those who are willing, those who want to continue their research, like, if you're not holding an executive position, if you're not binding other people to deal with your outdated needs, if you're not trying to reverse the world and to your taste, you're free to do and help out in ways you can.
Yeah.
And plus, like, I think maybe you can figure out to solve that problem, is that people can learn and to remain adaptable even as they age. Like, why should you shut down to the rest of the world and just live in your own rooted ways that are rarely shared by anyone?
Unfortunately, that's how people are, especially like, this is just from who I know, like, does this sort of thing, is American politicians, like Congress people. They will be sitting in their chairs for decades and decades. Like, a lot of them are in their 70s, 80s. When America was founded, it was people in their 30s and 40s that were in those chairs, and now it's the people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they try to represent the people, but if we're being honest, they don't really understand what's going on in the younger generation. They are just, at best, just guessing and being told by other people that don't really know what's going on to the people who are younger. So, like, as hard as it is to say, like, put limitations on how long someone can be doing something, because it should be very merit-based. And if you are a very competent older person, all power to you, and you are adaptable as an older person, all power to you. Unfortunately, that is the minority of people who are in those positions. They're just kind of clinging on to what worked, as you said, taking their, it's almost like their past selves are advising themselves in this time. Like as you were saying, someone who was in the Ivy Leagues 20 years ago trying to give you advice into going into computer science, that wouldn't work anymore in this day. And adaptability and change is, I feel like, a more rare trait than it should be. And it's tough to balance between constant revolutions as to give the younger people all the power, or like letting the people who have the more experience, let them do their thing. And it's a push and pull in that kind of sense.
Something for me to think about as well, right? Like, I'm a big fan of meritocracy. The idea that the people we put in positions of influence, positions of power, are the best at what they do. No matter what you do, like anything from being a simple janitor, to gardener, to a president of a state, prime minister, you want them to be the best, right? You want to be confident that people who have that level of responsibility, like the doctors who perform surgery, the pilots who fly your aircraft, you want to believe, you want to know that they are the best.
Yeah.
And this is the best you can have with what we could do. Getting there is not an easy feat, right? There's so many obstacles and ways in which people who are sometimes not the best at what they do become incentivized, or become pushed forward. Connections, influence, even money, right? Like a lot of things sometimes sway our desire for meritocracy, and it becomes something else, right? Maybe you might have a great innate natural skill and talent to be a pilot, but if you don't have the financial means to achieve your 1,000 hours, right, it may not be, you may never be able to realize and put yourself in those positions. And sometimes the structure we have itself may not allow you to achieve the position of influence that you desire for, because other people, for whatever reason, will be put in that position. But the fundamental problem of meritocracy is that we don't really have the means to evaluate, the means to select. If everybody looks the same on paper, if everybody sounds the same on an interview,
it's hard. Merit is something that is, as you can try to make it objective, but when it's very multivariable, and when something's multivariable, it's hard to calculate what is the true merit of someone, especially when you have to compare them to other people. Comparing people to people is, everyone's different, and it's a dangerous game to play when you're saying you're more valuable than that person. Like that's kind of what happens in a meritocracy.
Yeah, you're not really comparing though. That's the thing, is like, even in a meritocracy, you're not really making a comparison. You select a set of idealized qualities, which are being idealized right now, and probably just by you, right? And you compare people based on that set of idealized qualities. But even those qualities you struggle to measure. So you have those rough measurements that you think you have. Like, this is no science. Like, this is just some sort of, you're being a shaman. You're putting up some magic tricks, because you have these rough measurements that you're trying to put together, and like, okay, like this measurement is bigger than this measurement, but like, well, your margin of error is so great that, like, humans are not really, like, we don't really have good ways of evaluating people. Like, even grades, right? Like, this is the best we've come up with so far. This is what we're trying to use. If anybody has a better alternative, and people do sometimes have a better alternative, but they're still pretty marginal. Right?
Yeah, and the problem is with like current systems, the systems can grow so large, exacting a change into someone that finding something's better, but finding something that's better that's also scalable is a very grand issue, because everything that needs to be done now needs to be done at great scales. So it's a much harder thing to change every university's grading system than it is to just say screw university in general.
There's a very high cost associated with scalability, especially scalability of change. Introduction of something new, that's great. But if you're trying to change something that's current, you better have good reasons, and you better have some good support. It's very expensive, financially, in terms of time. Like, immediately opens up to like thousands of questions. What about students who are currently in school? Like, how would the fundamental change in the grading system going to affect their performance? Like how is that going to affect, like how, like, because if you study half of your life under one evaluation system, then the evaluation system changes, right? Like are you going to like essentially just forget about everything they've done before and only think about the future, right? There's so many questions that appear and so much resistance that grows to it that you can't enact a change for the better because of the sheer friction, the static friction of it, right? If you can manage it, if the need for change arises, then you can introduce the change in the competition different ways takes place, and you can then win this competition and have your proposition enacted. But if there is no demand to change, pushing people to change will not work.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Well,
those are the realities we have to contend with, and hopefully we make the best out of it.
for
It's
sure.
like same thing with self-driving cars. Like if we can build self-driving cars that are more safe than the current vehicles we have, who will take responsibility for when the accidents will happen? Nobody wants to take that responsibility. So we have to contend with the fact that more people may lose their lives because we are unable to put responsibility on someone.
Yeah, having a 10% death rate that's human error versus 5% death rate that's computer error is humans don't like that, and so yeah, it's a tough thing to swallow. And yeah, well, Bogdan, you have given me a whole lot to think about. This was a fantastic conversation. We're gonna have to end it here. We've been going for 2 hours. This was really good. Happy to have you here. Thank you for talking with me today, and hopefully we'll do it again soon sometime. And
For sure.
yeah, this was really good.